Hello, EDUU 606 colleagues. My name is Buddy Kickler, and today I'm going to be talking about my research project, which was epilepsy. What is it, and how does it affect the brain, student learning, and varying educational issues? So, looking at relevant research regarding epilepsy, first we need to know what it is. It is the fourth most common neurological disorder. And epilepsy occurs when surges of electrical activity in your brain can cause recurring seizures. Oftentimes, the cause of epilepsy and seizures is unknown. When looking at epilepsy, there are two types of seizures: generalized and focal. Generalized affect both sides of the brain and tend to be more severe. The two types of generalized seizures are absence and tonic clonic. Focal seizures affect one part of the brain and are typically not as severe, only lasting more or less 30 seconds. There are three types: simple focal, complex focal, and secondary generalized. The treatment for epilepsy uh, is as listed: medications, also called anti epilepsy drugs or AEDs, surgery, implanting electrical devices that can monitor those electrical stimuluses, and specialized diets. Most people go with medication to monitor their seizure outtake, with the second most being surgeries, removing that part of the brain that is causing the epilepsy. Areas of the brain involved. So this can actually occur anywhere in the brain. There's no specific portion. However, the primary location is in the temporal lobes, specifically the mesial portion or the middle, and the frontal lobes. Those are the two main places in the brain, but it can actually occur anywhere. What's happening in the brain is that there's a miswiring of neurons in the brain, causing disturbances in the brain's normal electrical activity. This is causing miscommunications with muscle movements, which is where in seizures you start to see tensing up, spasms, convulsions, drooling, stuff that the person having the seizure cannot control because all of those wirings are getting misconnected. Rarely, there can be memory loss, and that could be long term, but most often it's not. And physically, the body endures a lot during an epileptic seizure, as I said, with the convulsions and the tensing up, drooling. Sometimes someone is soiling themselves, um, falling during a seizure, or hitting anything that's nearby. All those different physical attributes um, can result in some physical harm to the person. Impact on learning. So the three that I identified were social issues, academic issues, and communication issues. When looking at how one is learning in the classroom, one with epilepsy tends to have low self-esteem, a lack of motivation, and struggle with social interactions. They feel cut off from the rest of the class, or their peers, just in a non-classroom setting. But in a classroom setting, they feel cut off from their peers. They're afraid to get involved, and that's what we tend to see. Academically, there is no proof that epilepsy itself decreases academic performance. However, things such as those AEDs, those medications that I discussed, um, due to side effects, may make students more fatigued and not have the energy sometimes in class to complete assignments. So, really being cautious of knowing that it may not be their fault that they can't participate in class physically. And then communication issues. Sometimes parents don't want to inform the school of the student's condition in order to prevent them from being singled out, wanting them to try to live as normal of a life as possible. But that can impact the student because then the school and the teachers are not educated on the student's disability and cannot support the student and be there for them if an epileptic seizure were to occur. And this infographic does a great representation of what people see and don't see with people who have epilepsy, and that's very prevalent in the classroom setting as well. And lastly, the application to the classroom. So, how can knowledge of epilepsy and seizures and all the background information be relevant and applicable to the classroom? Well, first is providing a safe classroom environment, making sure that there's not stuff that someone can potentially harm themselves on if they were to have a seizure and start convulsing, and hopefully not bump into. So, providing that safe classroom. Flexibility with due dates. Students are going to be getting taken out of school occasionally to go to doctor's appointments, maybe getting a blood draw, or maybe that's just one of their days that they're really tired and need to stay home, or it was just a tired day and they were there, but they just couldn't get much done. So being flexible with those due dates and understanding that there's stuff that they can't really control. And tying into that one is the empathy for fatigue. So just because a student is there in the classroom and they're tired doesn't mean it's because they just don't care or don't want to be there. Physically, they just may not be able to handle it that day. And again, that has to do with the AEDs, or if someone had gotten the surgery within the last year or two, fatigue is also a possibility. So understanding that fatigue is something that they can't really control. Develop an inclusive setting. So creating activities to where the student can be involved, group assignments, whether it's small group, large group, or just a pairing activity. Just getting the students involved and not letting them be last to get picked. Implementing a buddy system. So this is having somebody else in the class that knows of this student's situation, and it will just go over a lot more smoothly. They have an outlet, they have a new friend that they can develop a new relationship with, but having somebody else in that classroom that knows what's going on, that they're comfortable with talking about that with. We don't want to pick a random student and say, you're going to learn about this student's disability, but someone that they are comfortable with sharing that information with and being their buddy or their go-to. Or if something were to happen in the class and you weren't there, maybe you were out sick, that buddy in the buddy system knows what to do. And then lastly, just educating the students. Again, this is a cautious one. We have to be careful that we're not overstepping boundaries. But if the student is feeling comfortable to share what epilepsy is, or even saying, I have epilepsy, I have seizures, it is a sensitive topic, but you could do a generalized educating of the students without singling out the student who has the epilepsy, but just educating them and letting them know, hey, this could happen to anyone, is great to have set in the classroom so that everyone knows what to do if an epileptic seizure were to take place in the classroom. So that is my presentation on epilepsy and its excuse me, its effects on the brain, student learning, and varying educational issues in the classroom. Thank you.